In what can be viewed as his most explicit statement on Taiwan so far, the US President Joe Biden has now said that US forces would defend the self-ruled island in the event of a Chinese invasion.
What should Chinese President Xi know about your commitment to Taiwan?
We agree with what we signed on to a long time ago, and that there's a one China policy, that Taiwan makes their own judgments about their independence. We are not moving, we're not encouraging their being independent. That's their decision.
But would U.S. forces defend the island?
Yes, if in fact there was an unprecedented attack.
So unlike Ukraine, to be clear, sir, U.S. forces, U.S. men and women, would defend Taiwan in the event of a Chinese invasion?
Yes.
Biden's statement came amid concerns that Russia's war in Ukraine could inspire Beijing to attack the island in a similar manner. Speaking at the interview, Biden, however, distanced himself from the question of whether Taiwan is or should be independent. When asked about Washington's policy on Taiwan, Biden said that the U.S. will still abide to its one China policy and that his administration particularly will not encourage Taiwan's independence. However, this decision will entirely be on Taiwanese people on what path they will ultimately follow. When asked to comment about Biden's latest comment on Taiwan, a White House spokesperson said that the U.S. policy towards Taiwan had not changed. Biden has made similar statements before, spurring outrage in Beijing. In May, Biden said a yes when asked if the U.S. was prepared to become involved militarily in Taiwan.
That's the commitment we made. That's the commitment we made. We are not, look, here's the situation. We agree with a one China policy. We've signed on to it and all the attendant agreements made from there. But the idea that it can be taken by force, just taken by force, is just not appropriate. It will dislocate the entire region.
The U.S. president had made similar statements last year as well, when he clearly pledged to defend Taiwan against China's military aggression. U.S. officially maintains a strategic ambiguity on the self-ruled island's independence issue. However, its Taiwan Relations Act obligates the U.S. to help equip Taiwan to defend itself. Now, that's what happened earlier this month when the Biden administration announced another round of weapons sales to Taiwan worth some $1 billion. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee also approved a bill last week to boost ties with Taiwan and give it more military hardware to deter a Chinese invasion. The bill, however, needs to pass through some more steps before it can be made into law. All these developments come as ties between the U.S. and China continue to remain at its lowest point. Tensions with China flared in recent months after U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited the island to signal support for its democratic government. The White House, however, sought to manage the potential fallout from the visit, which saw Beijing renew its military drills in the Taiwan Strait. Now, for more on this, we are being joined by Stephen Gola from California, who is an international affairs expert. Thank you for being with us. Now, Biden has once again vowed full military support to Taiwan in case of a full-blown invasion attempt by China, saying that the U.S. troops will defend Taiwan in case of Chinese invasion. What do you make of this statement?
Good question. I don't mean to make light of such a serious matter, but in some ways this is Uncle Joe being Uncle Joe, and I mean that in the sense of being a bit frustrated, but also affectionate about his comments. President Biden has a history, not just with Taiwan, but with several other issues, of getting out ahead of himself or the administration, or his own administration, or when he was vice president, the Obama administration, in terms of making statements. And as you pointed out, this is the strongest statement, saying that the U.S. troops would certainly come to Taiwan's defense, whereas officially, and the White House, his own White House, keeps kind of correcting him and saying we maintain what's called strategic ambiguity about whether the U.S. would come to the defense of Taiwan. By this point, having said this several times in his presidency, I guess the strategic ambiguity is gone. I don't know if that's a good thing, but it is what it is. I think the Chinese leaders need to rely on that guarantee by President Biden, even if it was not something that was necessarily well considered within his administration.
Right. And Stephen, how can we expect Taiwan to respond? The White House, though, maintained that there is no change in the U.S. one China policy.
Yeah, I mean, I think Taiwan would probably respond enthusiastically. They've got a guarantee from the President of the United States of U.S. troops and forces coming to the defense of Taiwan if China were to attack. Now, let me take a half step back. Maybe this is intentional on the part of the president. Maybe he's not getting his mouth get ahead of his brain or the U.S. policy. And this is a bit of a warning then to China to not take the same risk that Russia did in invading Ukraine. Speaking of Ukraine, though, one other point I want to make is that this statement by President Biden is in some ways counterproductive, not in terms of China and Taiwan necessarily, but at a point when the U.S. wants China to refrain as much as possible from supporting Russia in terms of arms supplies, economically, diplomatically, regarding Ukraine. I don't know how much good it does for the president to say something that will aggravate the Chinese government. I don't think it makes sense in terms of that other theater of operations, that is the Ukraine-Russia military dispute, the war going on there.
Absolutely. Now, Stephen, we did see tensions flared earlier when Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan. Have there been any comments from China on these latest statements from President Biden?
Well, to be frank, I don't know. I think China, this news, even though the interview was apparently earlier in the week, the news has just come out. I would expect that China would reiterate its opposition to the president's position and possibly point out to the U.S. and the world that there is this strategic ambiguity in terms of what had been and maybe still is the official U.S. position. One other thought, though, on Taiwan, though, is that we never know what a government will do, what kind of steps, especially an autocratic government led just by one person's whims or desires, such as China might do. But if anything, I would think that China might be a bit more reticent and reluctant to consider an invasion of Taiwan, given the Russian experience with Ukraine. Invading an island that's well prepared and that is an island, so you have to cross a body of water to mount an invasion, might be even more difficult for China than Russia's invasion of Ukraine was. So I don't know if Biden's statement was meant to intentionally discourage China at a time when China may already be discouraged from taking such steps, at least in the near future. In any event, I don't know if it was the most well-advised statement. This may blow over. In the U.S., for example, what's getting more attention is Biden making the claim that the pandemic is over when we've got 150,000 Americans dying a year from COVID, and that, by way of comparison, that would be the equivalent of over 500,000 a year in India. I'm hoping this all blows over and that this is all just marked down as another either statement or misstatement by President Biden that doesn't fundamentally to change the dynamic in that part of the world for the worse.
Absolutely. Stephen, thank you very much for your valued opinions there.
Thank you.
WION, now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.